Mad Dad City.
So now, dude, so a couple properties in your first year,
Yep.
then the market crashes.
Market crashes.
And that, I'm sure, was super scary at first, but then you probably saw the opportunity.
Yeah, and so
Pretty
exactly
quickly.
what happened was once the market crashed, more houses in this neighborhood started popping up
Yep.
for stupid
I remember you had
shit.
told me this before, like you were buying houses on a credit card. Or,
Yeah, exactly. So that's what happened on the next property was I had over this, and I think it was actually I didn't buy the third one until almost a year after I had bought the second or
Okay.
the second rental. It was
So you
almost
got your
a
feet
year.
under you, you got used to it, you've got some experience now,
Yep.
still kept an eye on the market.
Right.
And then
Yep.
2008, just off a cliff.
Just
All
off a
right.
cliff. And again, even the neighborhood that I was in, I mean, I think I ended up buying, I think 5 houses in a calendar. It was something like 5 or 6
Yep.
properties, and it was like once a month. It felt like I was buying something and getting
Is that
into.
exciting and scary when you're
Honestly,
doing that?
it was.
Or is it
It wasn't really scary at that time,
really?
And
Okay.
again, I think some of it was because I didn't feel like I didn't have. I mean, I had a very serious girlfriend, but I didn't have a wife. I didn't have a kid. I
Yeah.
didn't have somebody that was 100% dependent on me. So I
Yep.
felt like
You're confident enough to
can.
where if
Yeah.
this whole thing craters, you'll land on your feet and figure something out.
Right.
That's another thing is I have an entrepreneurial like mindset,
Right.
but anytime I get a serious idea, I'm like, dude, if this would fail,
Right.
I can't martyr my family's like future for my desire to take a risk on something
Right.
at this point. You know what I mean? So you got to do it early.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I tell everybody. I mean, I would say it on 2 standpoints, right? Is that
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend doing it early, but
For sure.
but even still now, even if you do it at 44,
Yeah.
45, it's even if you think about even getting a 15-year note or a 20-year note, that's still, when you're retiring and that's still having.
That's what I want to do, man. Is like, when we first moved back, my friend Ryan, who's still doing it
Yep.
and successful, and I'd love to have you both on here at some point soon, just to brainstorm and get ideas. But where I'm at right now is like, I think I over the next short period of time, I think I could go into the market with 50, whatever that means. And so what I'm having a tough time figuring out is like, if I have that, what are the next like actual action items I need to take? And then what would someone like yourself who's got experience, you're on the Missouri side.
Right.
You're not, do you have anything in Kansas?
I don't.
So I don't know the market well enough. Are there regulations that are different in each state that matter enough to pick and choose? Do you want to stay in Kansas? Do you want to stay in Missouri? They're probably both okay.
Yeah. I don't think there's any difference,
Yep.
with that.
And there's probably ways around this, but like I need to find something that minimizes the down payment, which I think you have to put down 20 or 25% today.
Yeah, it's last I heard it was 20, but again, you might be able to. There's
As a first
certain
time-
banks.
Yeah. Okay. So should I go to a bank and talk to a bank? I would imagine.
So yeah,
Okay.
that's what and I would even say, and I've got the bank that I currently use. I can certainly get
Definitely,
you in
yeah.
touch with him. This guy's awesome.
Okay.
But yeah, really, to me, what you want to do is get in with a local bank, right?
A local bank.
Because but again, when I first started, because I was going through these, brokers,
Yep.
they just would get the loan, sell it off and whatever. So I had, one of these big banks
Okay.
serviced my loans. And then that's basically what happened was, I got introduced to, Paul, and, Paul is a hard money lender. Paul's the next one that kind of changed my life,
Yep.
that helped me kind of grow my business and help give me kind of that confidence.
Who's the other
and
dude? Mark.
Mark, yeah.
Mark and
Paul and
Paul.
Mark, yep. And so Paul helped me understand that there was, ways to get, money out there. And it took a while before Paul and I finally, made a connection where he could make money off of the
Yep,
connection
okay.
he had with me. But one of them was there was a local bank, and he was like, "Hey, I've got this bank." Because at this point, as you mentioned, I literally took money. I did these balance transfers off of credit cards, so I would get like $15,000-$20,000 in my account,
Yeah.
and I literally went and bought a house with it because that's how
Yeah.
much these houses drop to.
So you'd open up a credit card 20 grand, and then you go to the bank and say, I want to do a balance transfer off of this credit card to raise funds to go and then put down the down payment, something like
So
that?
no, so basically the money just got directly from the transfer. So then I bought. So then I didn't owe anything on the house, right? So
Yeah.
technically I didn't owe anything on the
Oh,
house.
okay. So
So
then,
I paid cash
yeah.
for the house. But again, going back to even on a $20,000 credit card payment, it's like $200 a month.
Yeah.
So again, I'm like, I know I can get somebody to rent this for 200 bucks a
Cover
month.
this. Yep.
And so I must have had, I mean, at one point, I probably had 80 or $90,000 of credit card debt that I had, but I owned 4 houses outright
Paying it.
that I
Yep.
didn't owe a mortgage on.
Yeah.
And so, so again, I talked to Paul a lot, and he's like, "Hey, I know this local bank that does not have they have, because it's something, however they're insured or whatever, they didn't have to go through the Freddie
Mm.
Fannie stuff, where you could only have so many loans. You had to, it had to be certain regulations, whatever." And Paul he says, "But here's the thing though, they do old school lending. You have to meet with the bank president
Oh, nice.
before they will let you
That is old
loan."
school.
Yeah. And I was like,
sure.
"Cool, bring it
Yeah,
on.
let's
Let's
go."
do it. Let's do it." So, so his name was Mark, actually, the president of this bank. And I can tell you, I don't know if you want me to tell you the bank or not, but
Well, I'll get it from you after. I whoever you recommend to chat with, because my goal for this year, at some point in 2024, sooner or later, I want to have one long-term rental property, whatever.
yeah,
If it's a really cheap one, teeny tiny house that's inexpensive, or whatever the range is, I need to take action on
sure.
it to get the one thing, to get started. That's the hardest part in anything,
It
man.
is,
I just want to get
absolutely.
one, learn from the experience, and then improve the process and see if I can take a swing at another one.
And that's
So,
that's exactly, could not have said it better. I mean, that's
okay.
exactly exactly what it is. So, and I don't know if this bank is still doing it that
Yep.
way.
Yep.
And I don't think they are actually. I think this guy, I think he's since retired or
Okay.
sold off the bank or whatever. But so I met with Mark, and he liked what I had to say. I showed him, and I think he had a daughter or somebody that went to this college as well. So
Okay.
we had all these connections, and I think actually the high school you went to, his daughter maybe went there.
Oh, okay.
There was some connections. It was real interesting so again, right, when you can make connections
Yeah.
and that kind of thing, it makes somebody
That's sales, man. That's sales 101.
Yeah, it is.
I've carved out a somewhat decent sales career. It's the only actual occupation I've ever had at any company I've worked for, and people forget, man, the first fundamental thing of it is people,
right,
relationships. Like, just be cool with the people, and then be an expert in your product later. But don't start off with it. Just get to know the people,
Yep,
And
absolutely.
it's funny how that reigns true. No matter how
is.
much is automated through technology, et cetera, you still need to know the people.
Yep.
So,
Yep. So
cool.
yeah, so they basically agreed to give me a loan.
Okay.
And so what they did is they basically said, what we'll do is we'll go appraise a couple of your properties, and we will give you 75% of whatever the appraisal amount is.
Okay.
And so then I think originally the way I did it, they had 2 different options. They had a 15-year fixed that I could get into, or they had a 30-year fixed with a 5-year amortization. So basically, after 5 years, you had to re-up the whatever. It basically resets. It was basically like an arm where it would reset after that 5 years.
Okay.
So at that point, now if I could do it all over again, obviously, if you can get into the lower terms, you pay less interest, you get better rates, you pay it down a lot quicker. But at that point, I was like, oh, I was just all about cash flow. I just wanted to make
Yeah.
sure I could get as much cash flow, coming in. So I was like,
Yep.
let's do the 30, which was nice because it increased my cash flow, quite a bit. So they took a couple of the properties, and then that's what they did. They basically took the money from that, paid off the credit card debt. So
Mhm.
then I basically now had the mortgages instead of the credit card debt.
Yeah.
And guess what happened when I didn't have any more credit card debt? I could basically then tap back into
Yeah,
that
you could
if I
just
needed
start
to.
over again.
Yep.
Okay.
And so I did. So I ended up buying a couple more. I paid $10,000 for one house at one point. I mean, it was like
That's yeah.
crazy. It was crazy.
Well, I mean, that's the market at the time, man. It was a fever pitch.
It was. It was.
People were getting. I mean, to get demand, like, the government had to step in and give you $8,000 if you were a first time home buyer,
Yeah.
just because that's how
Right.
depressed the market was.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And so once I got that kind of going, because then at that point I think I had 9 or 10, properties,
Okay.
and
So
then
you got some real momentum at this point.
So again, yeah, and to your point, right? And as soon as I started showing that I knew what I was doing, because at that, and it still might be this way. At that point, I was always told you had to have 2 years
Okay.
of rental income before a bank would go, okay, we'll use that now to give you more
Yeah,
loans.
got it.
And so again, but because this other bank, I think they were able to kind of sidestep that for me.
Interesting. Okay.
And so I was able to keep buying properties. And it's been long enough now. I feel like even that they were like one property, they were even like, if you buy it at, we just want to make sure you're at a 75% loan to value. So if you're able to buy it low enough, we'll still give you, give you the loan for it. Cause like the next one I bought was like $20,000.
Okay.
And I think it appraised at that time for maybe $50,000.
All right.
And now the house is probably worth $150,000, at
Yeah.
this point, just to kind of give you an idea of what it's,
Yeah, I'm
what it's
sure.
done.
I mean, our home and every market, even just we bought here 3 years ago, and I just got my statement the other day. It's like, okay, that's cool, but now I got to pay taxes on it.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah, exactly.
it
Yeah,
just continues to increase, and
it
I
is.
don't think that trend's continuing or going to discontinue. You tell me if I'm wrong. Interest rate spikes kind of spooked people for a second, but like I don't know, this gets into like some controversial issues, but I think climate change, the more that it impacts coastal areas, people are just going to naturally start gravitating towards, mid America where
Yeah,
we're at. And man, they're going to have to go somewhere. And so, like, I don't think, like, because you read the science on like the climate change issues, that's, over the next 10, 20, 30 years, that's serious stuff where millions and millions of people are used to living near these, the coastal communities where it's going to dramatically change and everybody seems to be ignoring it.
yeah,
I was just at my buddy's place. He's got a nice condo on the coast in Miami. And just in the back of my mind, I'm like, man, do you guys read the news? Like,
yeah.
you know what I
No,
mean? Apparently not. I mean, it's a super sweet place.
absolutely.
But I'm just curious. But that's my thinking. Am I wrong? Am I
I
off?
no, I don't disagree. Well, and
Okay.
the other thing you think too is like you keep seeing all these things with Kansas City and how it's like one of the
Oh, dude.
hot up and coming places, and
No
you should
doubt.
go visit Kansas City,
Yeah.
and it's one of the top like places for,
Safest.
yeah,
I
it's
think where we live right now, I've seen articles. We're like the second best community in the country of some. I'm almost like,
yeah,
oh, well, that's cool. I had no
yeah,
idea.
it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, and to your point, I mean, I just think it's um, where it's just going to keep coming. And you're right. That's the funny thing about the interest rates is the interest rates that we have now. That's basically what it was when I was starting,
Yeah, and
15,
everybody's
20 years
freaking out
ago. Yeah, and
about it.
everybody's freaking out
Yeah,
because they were at 3% and 4%,
didn't they
and
used to be in the teens and 20s, like
in the 80s
in
they
the
were.
80s? Yeah, I
Yeah,
was gonna
yeah.
say like it to me comparatively. I remember my dad trying to teach me a few of those things, and it just seemed like they were way higher back in the day.
Yeah, yeah, no, it is. It is. And you're exactly right. At least I think anyway that you do get that initial like, oh my gosh, the interest rates, I'm not going to do this. And
Yeah,
then that kind of subsides a little bit. And then people start going, well, I still want to buy a house and
yeah.
it's still a great investment. It's still better use of my money, buying something
Yeah,
than renting
because I think that's
something.
what I want to, long term rental, where it's I'm not trying to do the short term Airbnb thing, first off or
Yeah,
anything like that. You read about some people being super successful on that stuff. That's cool. Maybe if I was successful and I had like an actual existing portfolio, I could maybe take a
yeah,
chance or two. But for me, I want to be as hands off as possible, knowing that there's risk and that there's going to be work involved. I'm not oblivious to that. Um, but yeah, I just want to get started on one. Now, another question I have for you is what type of like asset protection do you have in place for your properties? Or I'm assuming you have something LLC,
yeah,
some sort
yeah.
of, overall business portfolio structure. What do you do
Yeah,
there?
yeah, exactly. So and I've read a lot of different, schools of thought, and I think everybody does whatever is good for them, right?
Yep.
So I just have everything in one LLC,
Okay.
and I've read a lot of things that say, well, you should only put 4 or 5, and you should put a new LLC for every
Yep.
because that way it can protect and this and that and
Yep.
the other. I've just never, I don't know, for whatever reason, it just hasn't
Okay.
really been like a thing for me. Like, okay, I'm going to do this, now. I've just kind of kept it all into one.
Yep.
And then I do have it's a commercial loan, liability loan that, or,
Okay.
through my insurance, it's like $1 million that it covers a lot of different, crazy accidental stuff if it
Okay.
were to,
But because
to happen.
the reason I ask is, I've Googled a few things and tried to have some intro conversations to learn on stuff like this tax investment. I think the company's name is like Anderson something something, and I had an introductory conversation with them, and they definitely have all of these scare stories where they're like, oh man, if this guy trips and falls down the stairs of his property and you're the one that owns it, he could sue you, and then all of your other properties could be, I guess not for lack of a better word, confiscated in that lawsuit. And now you just lost your entire portfolio because you just didn't set it up. And it's like, man, okay, but it sounds like you're selling me insurance. You know what I mean? Like that's all. And so I haven't done anything. I'm just curious as to like what the actual things are to do as you set up a business.
Yeah, yeah, and you can do it. Even when you come time to set that up. Like we used LegalZoom is what we use, and we actually set up one for a. We were going to maybe do a property management, so I had a property management LLC, which I never used, and then I had my other one that we actually did. That we just went and LegalZoom did not cost that much to do it, but you can actually do it.
I've done it for things.
Yeah, you can just do it online, and you can just go right to the state of Missouri, which actually I have to renew my fictitious name here pretty quick, but yeah, it's really easy. Yeah, it's like a couple $100, and then you get your LLC, and then once you have your LLC, then you can get get a business checking account, and things like that set up, and then basically it's just as simple as. So what happened originally, everything was going in my name. Yeah. So I would say I probably had 5 or 6 before I ever did an LLC.
Just actually under your personal
just my
name.
personal name.
So that's where the riskiest territory is, if it's all under your name versus a business at least with some sort of LLC protection around it.
Right.
And are your LLCs in state then, or did you do a Delaware or a Wyoming?
Yeah, it's just Missouri. Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's just here, and yeah. So literally all I did was it was super easy, and I even heard some horror stories too of where, if it's in your name and you title it out of your name, that they might accelerate a clause that you've got to pay the loan off early, and and all this stuff, and I was like, are they really in this market? Are you really going to be like, oh, sorry, we're going to foreclose on you now when they've got thousands and thousands of thousands that they're getting through? So literally all I did as soon as I got it, I just went to a title company and you do a quick claim, and it's like $20, and they just take it out of your name and put it in your business
that's
name.
It.
It's
title. Okay.
Yep, that's simple.
Nice, dude. Well, so where? If you, I guess, do you pay attention to the full Kansas City market at all, or do you just kind of stay in your sweet spot?
I just kind of stay, basically now I still, as you kind of mentioned, my wife's an agent, so
she's probably.
So I just have a couple searches set up now, basically a couple in that area that I am, and then in Lee Summit where I live, and so we kind of look around there too, because I'm like, if something pops up, I might be interested in. And people do know. So like I would say really like the last 4 deals that I've done were basically people just coming to me and being like, hey, I've got something, for you. And,
interesting.
So
that's a good spot to be, because I think that's what I don't even want to. I want to pick an area to zone in on and get familiar with that area, but I don't. I'll go on to my Realtor app and flip around on my phone, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm looking at. And then I try to look at the rental properties, about what are people paying in that area, and then bounce over to the properties for sale. Okay, if I bought this at X down payment, what? And then just doing mental math, trying to see if could I at least break even on this to start. And then I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, and then I just give up. So I need to get over that and get more science behind it. So I think I need to talk. When we're done here, I'll get a name from you to just make a phone call to your bank or whoever you recommend I talk to, and see if they're interested, if they'll take a conversation. I think I probably should do some sort of LLC to start. I want to set up the right foundation in case, that way you don't have to go backwards and do things in retrospect, because that's always more. What else am I missing if I were to try to figure one, just take my first swing? What are the things that I'm not even asking? What are the questions I should ask?
I'm not even sure, it's necessarily asking the questions, but, it's kind of something you'd mentioned earlier, and it's what I tell, and I love talking about, real estate.
Sure.
Pretty much as soon as anybody finds out that I have real estate, they want to talk to me about it, like, oh my God, because of these, like, fixer-upper shows, are popular, and so then people are like, oh, I want to do that, I should do that, and you hear about real estate, and it's like, well, tell me about it. I have no problems, but that's the thing I always talk about right off the gate is, you just gotta start, like, you know. And I've read a lot of books on it. I've kind of written some, you know, thoughts down, and, you know, thought about either
Writing
doing
a book,
blog
or
writing
okay,
a book, or, you know,
All right, well,
whatever.
dude, let's start off. It'd be funny. Here's the experienced real estate with Nate, and here's the first the green, like not ignorant to real estate market guy. And what are the mistakes that I'm going to make?
Yeah.
And then I come back and bounce the situations off of you, and
No, I think something like that's
come on over anytime. Let's do it.
Yeah, no, because I think that's the thing that, you know, I kept getting frustrated with some of the books that I read, because to me, they all sounded the exact same.
Okay.
They all sounded the same. Oh, you got to go, you know, you got to buy here, you got to put 20% down, you got to make sure you do this and this. You know, it's like, I understand that, but, like, tell me a little bit more about, you know, what was your thought, you know, like that, right? My initial thought process was, I got to be somewhere that I know somebody's going to rent, right? In a high rent area. Well, I'm right next to two colleges, right? So it was like, surely somebody's going to, you know, would be perfectly fine renting a house 2 blocks from, you know, from campus. I had another friend, his dad and mom had still do, and they had his thought process was, and they have it in Warrensburg, because there's a military base there. And he was like, there's a military base there. There's always going to be a need. Yeah. There's always going to be renters there, and so that's where he invested, you know, his time. They've got like 9 or 10 that they've had for 30 or 40 years. And you know, and so it's like, yeah. So that's, to me, is where can you find that you're going to have renters, right? That's and I would say the other thing is, and again, some of it's whatever your appetite is, right? That you'll read a lot of things that say stay out of the war zones, and I would say that's probably
war zones being where price battles take place, and
so like a bad area. So,
a bad area.
So like where
like actual
crime, where there'll be lots of, you know, shootings and drug activity and, you know, things like that, because, you know, in theory, you know, you're going to have that kind of, you know, issue, but you're going to be able to pick, even now you could probably pick up houses for $20,000 to $30,000, you know, in those areas. So like even
take the risk on it,
of $50,000, you could go pay cash for something and fix something up. But you're going to have a little bit harder time possibly selling it in the end. Possibly, you know, depending on what kind of renter you get. You know, so, but if you're trying to get a bunch of properties and that's what you want to try,
interesting,
you can go that route.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, so, you know, so that it's kind of, you know, again, kind of what your appetite is, and what strategy that you want to have. You know, again, so like for me, I was like, as long as I can make, you know, on a 30-year note, I was trying to get like $400 or $500 a month, and on a 15
in margin on the property.
And I didn't even look at it from like a percent of, well, this is my return on investment and whatever. For me, I just was like, I want to make money on. If I can make extra
on a
money
monthly basis, you want to take it.
I can bounce it around and, you know, and recategorize that money, and so and then on a 15-year, I was like, if I can make a couple $100 a month, then I'm paying it down quicker. But I can, you know, I can still cash flow on it, and it's amazing. I don't know if you've read a 15-year, maybe you have one now, but it's crazy how much quicker that stuff gets paid down.
I think I mean, we've always done, we've moved several times, but the houses that we have owned have all been 30 years, so maybe eventually, you know what I mean? But all right, well, dude,
it's crazy, but yeah, you know, and that's what I would tell you too, is like, and again, like for me. Now, I did live, right, at first I lived in the neighborhood where I was buying, so that obviously, you're probably not in your neighborhood.
I'm not buying any of these.
Yeah, you're not buying any of these houses here, but once I moved, I was still within a 20-mile radius of the property. And
you knew the area from being there.
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
And I know people I know a friend of mine, he's got like 10 properties, and most of them are kind of in one area, but he's got some that are, you know, a little spread out. And we've talked several times, and he's like, man, I wish they were, you know, closer together. That would make my life so much easier.
I've read that before. Is like, if you can keep, I mean, obviously, I think maybe my friend Ryan had mentioned that type of stuff. Is like, you got to find a central location, otherwise you're spending half your time just driving around the city.
Right, exactly. And then again, you know, too, when you get like handymen and things like that, and you're like, hey, I've got 3 properties. They can just hit all 3 of them in one day.
Yeah, so that makes your resources are more consolidated that way too. Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I would say, is find, within a, whatever you would feel as
10-mile radius.
10-mile radius, 20-mile, whatever is the max that you would, would go out.
Stay focused in there.
Yeah, and then you, that will start to help it, right?
Yeah.
And then I think you have to decide what's the strategy that you're going for, because I think there's a couple, right? So my strategy was I wanted the cash flow, because at that point in my life, right, that was the most important thing to me, because I was young, I didn't have kids, whatever, where now my strategy would be more, what's a good one that can I at least make my mortgage payment?
Yeah.
And then I'm looking at it from a
longer term.
Like
That's kind of what I'm trying to think too, since I'm in the spot where, I have kids. And to me, it's like, if I put X amount of dollars down, what would I get out of it in 10 or 15 years if I sold it, breaking even through that period? Obviously, any cash flow stuff is a bonus, but that wouldn't be, that's not the intent initially. I'm just trying to diversify a little investment stuff.
Right.
Yeah, right on. Okay.
No, that's exactly what it is. And I don't, and I know there's lots of things of condos or townhouses where that kind of thing. Like, again, I think it's one of those whatever your appetite is. And yeah, I mean, there's so much that's out there. And again, it's one of those. Once you start, you just got to do it, and it does, as you said earlier. To learn, I can learn and rinse and repeat, or whatever. Yeah, I mean, like it does. It's unbelievable. Yeah. Once you get a few, it really starts to get momentum.
That's just kind of been the experience in anything else in life, man. When you take a look at it, you gotta jump in and just start swimming.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't want to be looking back on, I wish I woulda, coulda, shoulda. So I think this is the year where I got to just get the first one in, and I have good resources like yourself, and then my friend Ryan. I can, it's not like I'm going in cold without any, mentor-ish type relationship to talk to. So, well, that's awesome, man. So we're a little bit over an hour, but I got a bunch of other questions we can save for another episode. Yeah. So my main takeaways are: make sure that I can find renters in whatever area there are. You got to make sure that you have some renters, and then pick an area, and then just know your strategy. So I'll get that. I'll get a name and number from you here, and I'll reach out to the bank, and then I'll see what I can do on setting up some sort of legal structure, and then freaking just find one, man. Well, dude, you are welcome. This has been Real Estate with Nate. I think that camera shut off, but at least we had these two. Right. I think I might have forgot to hit record on that, so it just shut off. That's all. Dude, I've gone entire episodes, and this has happened one time with Bert and Nate, where I never hit record on anything. We just started going, and then I realized it towards the end. I was like, well, that was fun, wasn't it? But.
Yeah, dude, there's still more to, there's still other, more to talk about.
Oh, yeah, and as I dive in, man, what I'll do is I'll bounce some ideas off you, I'll give you a call or shoot you a text occasionally, and then whenever schedules line up, we can, come out here, bring your wife out here, real estate-wise, from as an agent's perspective. And I'd be willing to bet that this, by the way, I don't make money off a podcast at all, but I'd be willing to bet that this actually, if I made a few shorts and then had a little segment underneath my channel on YouTube, however that works, that this would actually gain some traction by people, because people are really trying to learn about these things. It's not like there's any shortage of material out there, but as opposed to talking about aliens and all these other topics that we get into, this is actually a real one that impacts people if they want to listen. So
well, and I think too, there's so many different voices. To that point, you hear so many different things, and sometimes it's just and sometimes it's just the way that you hear, that you receive, that maybe a way that Robert Kiyosaki says something speaks to me differently. There maybe the way I say something speaks to somebody else differently. True. And
I'm really trying to make I feel like I'm way behind the curve on this, but I'm trying to immerse my brain into the thinking of investment strategies and finances and all these things, because I don't have a genuine interest in it, but I'm at a point where dude, my son's going to high school next year. Shit, you know what I mean? And then my daughter, my middle child, is 1 year behind him. Well, I better start. There's no better time than now to start, and I'm trying to immerse my brain in it and just repeat that information from as many different angles as I can. Because I've always tried to, but like I'd get like 10 minutes into something, and I just was not interested at all, and I would just turn it off and probably watch a Chiefs game or something.
Yeah, and to that point too, like that's one of the things I like is I've had my boys and they're 8th grade and 6th grade, but last year I had them starting coming down to help pick up trash and things like that, and so it's kind of nice too that you can also teach them.
That's what I want to do as well.
Whatever, because it is like some of it. Like my youngest, somebody had left a trash bin outside with the actual trash in it, and when they had moved out, and so it rained a few times, so there was water full in this, and he got a lesson real quick about what happens when you have stagnant water in trash, and so he went over and I was like, we got to get this out, and of course it smelled real bad, and he's over there like, oh my god, I don't want to do this. I'm like, hey. And I'm the guy, and I'm still helping do these things as the, as the owner and manager or whatever. Like I still
be hands-on.
Yeah.
I think that's how we started this conversation. Was I definitely want I'm trying to do the same thing with my kids. Is hey, look, here's the education path and the education system we have designed today, but there's an alternative that I need to expose them to.
Yeah.
That if you go out and you learn on your own, 'cause there's not really courses that. I think they're probably, but you have to really